Prime Minister, you're announcing the ban on Russian diamond imports and other sanctions on additional for G7 individuals or companies linked to Putin. Do you expect other G7 countries to follow you this weekend? What's your message to Putin?
Well, I think the most important thing we can do right now for global peace and security is to support Ukraine in its struggle against Russia, but also to ensure that Russia pays a price for its illegal and unprovoked act of aggression. That's why we've announced new sanctions today. We are talking with our allied countries, our partner countries, and I do expect others to follow, as they have done throughout the last year of this, where we have often taken the lead, whether it's providing resources to Ukraine or sanctions, and we've seen other countries partner with us, because ultimately sanctions are more effective when they're done in a coordinated fashion, and I hope that's what we'll see here as well.
OK, so sanctions for Russia. Do you expect this war to end next year? What's your message to Putin?
My message to Putin is straightforward, and we're not going away. Russia has conducted an illegal, unprovoked act of aggression by invading Ukraine, and Russia needs to know that we and other countries remain steadfast in our resolve to support Ukraine, not just in the here and now with the resources it needs to defend itself, but for the long term as well. And one of the topics of conversation I'll be having and have been having with my fellow leaders is about the longer term security agreements that we put in place for Ukraine to deter future Russian aggression and make them realise that they should just withdraw their forces.
OK, Prime Minister, why is bringing down overall net migration numbers so important to you?
Because it's something that we said we would do in our manifesto. I know it's important to the country, but I also know that tackling illegal migration is the country's priority, and that's why one of my 5 priorities is to stop the boats. Part of our ability to do that is cooperating with other countries, which is why I was pleased this week that we've opened up negotiations with the EU for our border agencies to cooperate more closely. And that practical cooperation will help us break the criminal gangs, tackle illegal migration, and to help stop the boats.
And Prime Minister, is overall net migration numbers going up or down?
Well, we'll see when the latest numbers are reported, but my clear goal is to reduce the levels of legal net migration, whilst at the same time focusing relentlessly on stopping illegal migration, and that's why one of my 5 priorities is to stop the boats.
And what were net migration numbers last year?
As I said, the numbers last year, I mean, you'll have them off the top of your head. We're about to get new ones, and we know that numbers are too high, and I want to bring them down. I've been very clear that my goal is to bring those numbers down.
Let's unpack it a bit, because back in 2019, the government promised to cut net migration. At the time, it was 226,000. It's gone up. It was 504,000 last year. Will it go down next year?
Oh, well, just on the numbers last year, if you actually look at that release that was put out, it's very clear that there are a set of factors which led to those numbers, including, for example, Ukrainian refugees, which are included in those numbers. So I think we need to treat a little bit of caution.
Also high numbers of foreign workers and student visas as well.
But there are also a set of unique circumstances relating to our refugee programmes for bringing Ukrainian refugees
What's
here.
going to happen
Well, look,
next year?
I'm not going to preempt what the future numbers are, but what I can tell you is I want to bring the numbers of legal net migration down.
The forecast...
That's something that we said we would do, and we remain committed to doing that. We're reforming our welfare system to ensure that we can move people off welfare and into work. I think everyone would agree that is far better for our economy and far better for people if we can do that. And at the same time, as I said, crucially, we must tackle illegal migration, and that's why one of my 5 priorities is to stop the boats.
Sorry to interrupt, I haven't got long. The forecasts say it will continue to climb to between 650,000 and nearly 1 million. If it's anywhere near those numbers, will you have failed as a government?
Again, Beth, you're speculating on what may or may not be. What I can tell you is I am committed to bringing the levels of legal migration down. We're very clear about that. There's a range of options we're considering. And at the same time, I think people know that I'm relentlessly focusing on stopping the boats because the levels of illegal migration are too high and they've escalated massively in the last few years.
Prime Minister, what I'm hearing is in 2019, you said you would bring them down below 226,000, the Conservative government. Last year they were 504,000. Next year the year to June 2023, June 2022, they're predicted to go up to 1 million. And you're not acknowledging that at all as a problem or saying that you might have failed as a government by failing to live up to that commitment for the British people.
What I'm not acknowledging is the specific figures because we don't know them yet, and it wouldn't be right to speculate.
Well, will you acknowledge the half a million from last year?
As we've already said, is that the levels of legal migration we want to bring down. I've been very clear about that. I mean, I'm absolutely committed to doing that. There's a range of options that we're looking at. I do think the numbers last year were impacted by the fact that we welcomed Ukrainian refugees to the UK, which is something I think we're all collectively proud of.
Let me put it this way then. Let's try and get a commitment out of you. Do you commit to bringing them back down below 504,000 by the next general election?
As I said, I'm committed to bringing down the levels of
but
net
you
migration
can't put a figure
that
on
I've
it.
inherited, and I'm relentlessly focused on stopping the boats. That's one of my 5 priorities, and we're doing absolutely everything we can to do that too.
Do you accept that by the next election you might not be able to bring them down below 500,000?
Again, I'm focused on bringing down the levels of legal migration, but I am also completely focused as one of my 5 priorities on stopping the boats, and I think that is the country's priority when it comes to migration. It's tackling illegal migration, it's stopping the boats. That's why we're passing new laws in Parliament, cooperating with other countries and returning over 1,000 illegal migrants to Albania.
I think what viewers might see is that in 2019 there were 224,000. They're now 500,000 in the year to June 2021, and they probably could go up to nearly 1 million next week. But and you can't give me a figure as to what you'll commit to. But anyway, let's move on.
What I can commit is that we want to bring those levels down. And I think people know that I'm working night and day to tackle illegal migration. One of my 5 priorities is to stop the boats. I think people know that. And that's why we're passing new laws in Parliament. And I think most people will agree that that's the right priority for us to be
Prime
focused
Minister,
on.
you're one of life's success stories. You were head boy at school. You had a career in finance that made you very wealthy. Now you're Prime Minister. How do you feel when you lose?
Sorry?
How do you feel when you lose?
How do you mean, Beth?
Well, you're a winner in life. How do you feel when you don't win?
Well, look, my focus in this job is to deliver for the country. I've set out 5 very clear priorities: to halve inflation, grow the economy, reduce debt, cut waiting lists and stop the boats. All I'm doing every day is focus on delivering for people against those 5 priorities. I firmly believe that that's what the country wants me to do. That's what the government is committed to doing, and we're working night and day to make sure that that happens.
And you lost to Liz Truss last year. Did that hurt more or less than losing over 1,000 council seats at your first test at the ballot box?
It is always disappointing to lose hard-working councillors, but the message I've taken is the country wants me to redouble our efforts to deliver for them. As I said, the 5 priorities I've set out, I believe, are the right ones: to halve inflation, grow the economy, reduce debt, cut waiting lists and stop the boats. That's what the country wants us to focus on. That's what I am focusing on day and night, and I will keep at it.
That morning, were you quite gutted?
As I said, it is disappointing to lose hard-working Conservative councillors. Many of them are friends and colleagues as well. But I'm going to work very hard to deliver for the country, and again, the 5 priorities I've set out, I believe, are the right ones. Those are the country's priorities: to halve inflation, grow the economy, reduce debt, cut waiting lists and stop the votes. Day and night, that's what I'm focused on. That's what the government's focused on. And whilst things are tough, I'm confident that things will improve and people will be able to see that we are delivering for them and improving their lives.
I'm nearly out of time, but just on that, you've been saying things are improving for households in the UK, but do you acknowledge many people are having a really tough time?
I always acknowledge that. I literally just said it as well. Of course it's a tough time at the moment. The number one challenge that families are facing is with the cost of living. That's why my first priority is to halve inflation. It's why we taxed the windfall profits of energy companies last year and used that money to pay around half of a typical household's energy bill. That support is worth £1,500. Now, we did that because we know things are difficult and we will keep helping people with the cost of living.
And what's your message to the father on Sky News this week who had to steal baby formula milk because he couldn't afford to feed his child?
Yeah, I'm very sorry to hear that. I know things are difficult. What I would say to families in that situation is please go and talk to your local council. The government has made available £1 billion to local councils for something called the Household Support Fund. It is there. That money is there to support families who are in particularly difficult circumstances, who, for whatever reason, all the other support we've put in place isn't sufficient or isn't getting to them. And there is lots of support in place for vulnerable families. And we haven't got time to go over all the different things now. But that money is there with your local council. Please go and talk to them. Ask them about the Household Support Fund. The government has given councils £1 billion to help families who are vulnerable and need that extra help.
And in his shoes, would you have done the same?
Sorry?
In his shoes, would you have done the same?
It's hard for me to comment on the particular circumstances of any families. I can tell you what I'm doing in this job is making sure that we've provided extra financial resources to councils so that they can help families who are in difficult situation with a little bit of extra help with essentials like that. I would urge them to go and talk to their council because that support is there.
OK, Prime Minister, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.